All right, I think we'll get started. Hello, everybody. My name is Darren Ramatala. I'm part of the product management team here at Thales, and I'm going to be moderating the session today, which is titled Transitioning to Recurring Revenue with Software Licensing. In this session, we're going to talk to you about how transitioning towards a recurring revenue model can benefit both you and your customers. We'll be looking at some of the main market trends that we see today, and we'll show you what transitioning might look like for you. Your speaker today is Eddie McNeil. Eddie's an experienced member of our strategic solution sales organization. Eddie's been with the company for the past 18 months, and he's got over 10 years experience in software monetization, software licensing. Eddie's background is in business strategy and consulting, and he spends his time helping companies like yourselves looking at what you've been doing today and working with them to develop strategies and action plans to transform their business. Before I hand over to Eddie, just a few quick words on housekeeping. This is a listen-only webinar. Everyone's on mute. If you'd like to ask any questions, please type them in the questions panel that's on the side of your screen. And at the end of the session, we'll go through as many of those as time permits. We will also be posting a few live survey questions during the session. You'll be able to answer the questions in those surveys also on the survey panel, which is on the side of your screen. The webinar is also being recorded. We'll be sending out a link of the recording to everybody that registered for this for the webinar. Lastly, thank you very much for taking the time to join. And with no further ado, I'll pass you over to our presenter, Eddie McNeil.
Thanks, Darren, and welcome everybody. So I'm going to take you through the transitioning to recurring revenue with software licensing. As Darren mentioned, we will be going through some market trends, looking at some items you need to think about when you're moving to recurring revenue, and how to get started and how we can help you to get started. So in terms of market trends, where we see our customers going is they're really mostly looking for the transformation and moving to recurring revenue because they want to have new revenue generating opportunities, so creating new revenue streams. They also are moving their customers across because they're getting customer demand and they need to increase their customer satisfaction. And to be able to make sure that you're not overloading the business as usual staff, so the operating organizations, we also have a look at the operational efficiency. And finally, one of the areas where we're seeing a big growth rate is on business insights. So looking at what's actually being used in your products down to a feature level, and how your customers are using those and how they're getting value out of those features. So with that, we're going to start our first poll. So I'll just launch the poll here. So what we'd really like to understand is, in your business, what's driving your transition to recurring revenue? So I'll give it a couple of minutes to start collecting those polls back, and then we'll have a quick discussion around what we see in terms of the biggest drivers from our customer base. So I can see that the revenue generation is certainly the largest reason why all of you are trying to implement recurring revenues, which is great. So that actually matches with what we're seeing within our market space as well. Now, obviously, the recurring revenue is generating your revenue, but you also need to make sure that your margin is increasing. So we see as well that the customer satisfaction is also increasing there as well. So once you have the operational efficiency and automating your quote to cash systems, and you're generating new revenue, you're creating more profitability. Okay, so for the moment, I'm going to close this particular poll. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your thoughts on that. So in terms of what our customers are actually, your customer expectations are, because of the way the trends are moving, and we're really taking a lot of the trends from the consumer industry as well, customers really want to be able to buy in different ways. So you'll find that different markets have different maturities in the way they buy your products. You'll be moving from perpetual to subscription and recurring revenue, but it's unlikely that you'll go 100% to recurring revenue and subscription models immediately. It may take a couple of years depending on the market and depending on the customers that you have. Customers want instant delivery, so they don't want to wait a long time to have the delivery of their products and also be able to use their products as well. They want to have an excellent customer experience. So as you move to subscription models, you'll need to have a much closer relationship with your customer. And that's going to benefit you as well, because you'll see what features your customers are actually using, how they're using those features, and be able to service them in different ways and adopt different license models quickly. The final piece of this is the data collection and usage reports. So identifying what your customers' trends are and how you may be able to invest in certain parts of your product development, and those investment dollars are very important for you to be able to put those dollars into the areas where the customers see most value. So we'll go into the second polling question. So what we would really like to understand is, out of those areas that we've just talked about, which are the most important areas to you and your business? Okay, so we're starting to see the polls come in now, and it's a little bit more of an even spread. So flexible pricing is almost the same as smooth user experience in terms of what you're actually focusing on and what's most important to you. So those go hand in hand. So that's great to see, because it means that you're thinking about the recurring revenue and changing your business so that you can actually service your customers in a better way and react to your customers much quicker. Usage and insights, interestingly, has come up on this one a lot higher than business insights did on the previous poll. Which is interesting only because it means that you're actually looking at the business insights separately to the actual usage insights, and maybe you're looking at changing in the future, changing the way that you sell to your customers as well. Apologies, just 1 second. Okay. So McKinsey did a survey in 2015, and the areas that they found, their 350 customers they surveyed, was that very much it's in line with what we've seen in the survey. It's about the flexibility to adjust capacity. It's about a smaller upfront investment. It's about a reduction in total costs. And it's a flexibility to be able to discontinue the subscription if they want to. Now, we did find in some surveys that we conducted as well, and Harvard's Business Review has also conducted surveys, that your customer lifetime value, if your customer satisfaction is high, can be up to 140% more than you would have if your customer satisfaction is low. So in terms of the types of and the evolution really of license models as we've seen over the last 10 years really, we've seen a rapid acceleration of different license models coming into the markets. We obviously started off with Perpetual and software maintenance. Then we started moving into module or feature-based licensing, where you'd license individual features. And then we get to the chasm. So the chasm is where you're moving from really a CapEx model to a subscription model, or to an operational expenditure model, an OpEx model. And that's where you get to subscription. We're also seeing a lot more customers wanting to track the usage and have a usage-based license model. And as we see from the last poll we've done, is that usage is very important to you and your customers. We are starting to see now the emergence of outcome-based license models as well. So this is typically where you've got a hardware company who need to change their business model to incorporate the hardware and the software, and actually charge the customer based on the outcome of the results. So it's then looking at the whole area of the business, the whole solution, including the services, including the stock, including the software and the maintenance, and really having the customer make sure that they have all of the services and the solutions they need to get the outcome they're looking for in their particular business, and that creates value for the customers. If we have a look at so IDC, you'll see here that we have a typical license model, and the subscription here is moving up, and you're looking at a CAGR of 17.5%. So the total market CAGR is 8.2%, and it's growing and growing. Now you will find that as you move to subscription, your maintenance will reduce, and that's because the maintenance is included within the subscription. So where you're looking at perpetual license, you have perpetual plus maintenance. Where we're looking at subscription, you're looking at subscription that includes maintenance and often includes servicing as well. So how do you get there? Now, what we found is that really the three core components for a successful transition. You need the strategy, so you'll need the vision, you'll need to define the impacts that are going to be on the business, and look at how your vision is going to be adopted throughout the business. Then you have to look at the operations, how you're going to operate subscription in a business as usual circumstances. So you need to be able to look at not just one part of the business. You need to look over the whole business, because you're changing the way you're operating. And then look at the technology, the tools you need to achieve those objectives. Now, where we work as Thales is we help you with the definition of the strategy, and also the operations, and identifying where in the operations there may be processes or systems that need to change. But the main parts that we work in is we're a product company, so we do have the technology and the technology suite to be able to help you to transition to subscription. Okay, so we've got another polling question. So what we'd like to understand here is that who in your company is sponsoring the transition to recurring revenue. So typically we see that the successful transitions from a perpetual model to a subscription model is where it's actually being led by the C-suite. So there'll be an owner there, and just would help if I launch the poll. So we may find that if you do have anybody else that's driving the change, if you could add that to the chat window, and we can have a look and see if there's any other areas of the business or any other leaders that are actually leading the change. Okay, so we've got clearly the CEO, so it's the leader that's actually making the change. That's coming from the top down, which is great. Product management is 35%, so presumably it's probably the chief product officer who's leading that as well. And often we do talk to the champion within the business. For us is often the chief product officer, but it's actually the CEO or the CFO who will actually approve the projects. Okay, so have a look at this. We have a look at some of the pitfalls that you may find as you're going into this this change in your business. In terms of strategy, there has to be internal alignments within the different stakeholder groups and the different parts of the organization to ensure that the strategy is effective and it's achievable as well. So we need to have a look at customer churn. So you may have some cannibalization within your organization as well. So you just need to manage that cannibalization within your business models. Reporting inaccuracies, you may find that you have revenue leakage currently, and where we find customers have a compliance issue, where your customers are actually using more software than they've actually purchased. That's often because there's not an effective activation tool to be able to understand what the customers are actually using, what's important to them. So you'll find that you need to change that as you go forward into subscription. And poor renewal rates, which is something that we also see within as a pitfall within the strategy. So in terms of the operations, often you'll find that there may be some billing disputes, mushroom headcounting. So in a previous webinar, that we had some questions about what was mushroom headcounting. So mushroom headcounting is really where you've got lots of manual operations, you've got lots of manual processes that are being delivered. Where you're growing your revenue through subscription, you don't want to be growing your headcount to do the manual processes. So those manual processes will also impact on support and the number of support tickets that come in. So we want to make sure we flatten out and automate some of your quote to cash processes, so that you have you can increase your revenue, but you're not having to increase your headcount in line with your revenue. And then in technology, we want to make sure that we're providing you the system, the most configurable system you can have without having customizations. Customizations can leave you with a technical debt, and we want to make sure that you're actually using something that is built for purpose. So it's not just our technology that will help you. There are other technologies that you'll need to think about when you move to subscription. Your development resources, are they ready to take on a new licensing subscription? And that will be around not just the cost of the development resources, but also the availability of those resources. Are they able to put the resources into the delivery of the roadmap that you may put in place? And part of that will be in a strategy, because part of the strategy will start building a business case, so that you can see what prioritization you need to make within the business to implement subscription. So we talked a little bit about the different areas of the business, and you need to make sure that all the different stakeholders and the wide stakeholder group is included. These are the typical people that we talk to within an organization when we're looking at how ready the organization is to change, and what kind of processes are causing some pain at the moment that can be resolved through some automation or through some delivery of additional capabilities within licensing. So order management, product management, obviously, and product engineering. IT, because you'll have some back office integration that may need to happen. Sales, because your sales team will most likely be driving the change. Your customers are asking your sales teams to change. Now, with sales, you'll find that, as I said earlier, not everybody will be ready for change. And one of the advantages of having a system such as a system that we provide is that it's very flexible. So you don't have what we find in homegrown licensing systems is that the license model is actually built in to the product. So if you want to change your license model from perpetual to subscription, you would need to actually release a new product. So we have a business decision engine that will actually mean that you can really protect against disruptive companies where they're going software only, if you're a hardware company. because what you can do is you can flip the business model for certain customers to move to subscription immediately, or to Perpetual, or from Perpetual. So that gives you a lot more business agility to be able to introduce new products and new markets and new business models into the market. Customer support are obviously very important. They're servicing your customers. Sometimes the customer success organization is associated with customer support as well, and they will actually be able to help you to make sure that your customers are getting the value that they want from your products, and that means that also you can have a better conversation and a more productive conversation and a more profitable conversation with your customers going forward. And obviously marketing is involved as well, because there's a change in the way that you're selling the products and the change in the way you're using the products. One of the areas here, one of the things that's missing here is that all of these areas are obviously very dispersed areas, and this is why we see the CEO or the C-suite being the executive sponsor to change the organization and to move to subscription. So we have another polling question, which is, what we'd like to do is we'd like to understand what stage of transition you're currently at. So whether you're at really just defining and communicating the strategy, or whether you're actually in the process of executing the strategy at the moment to move to subscription. Okay, so so it looks to be it's about 75–76% of defining and communicating the strategy at the moment. So at the beginning of that journey to move to subscription, and then we've got 23% that are actually 23–24% that are actually executing the strategy at the moment. Okay, so we have another polling question. This is the last polling question. And here what we want to understand is who actually owns the licensing, software licensing operationally within the organization today. So we often find that because you have so product management is often a lead for a particular product, but what we really want to understand is that as you go and you have your licensing harmonized throughout your business, and the strategy is actually implemented for the licensing and for subscription, how's that managed within your organization at the moment? Okay, so we have it's mostly licensing product manager, which is great, and we do actually have a job description for a licensing product manager that we can share with you. If you're interested in that, you can contact me after the webinar. And also the other one is operations. Now, operations, we find that this is where we need to the business needs to be optimized. And that's one of the reasons why that it sometimes sits there. For those that did put in other, we'd really appreciate it if you could put in the chat window which part of the organization is actually owning the software licensing, to see if there's any commonality within the other category. And IT are obviously implementing a lot of the licensing. They're sometimes also operating the licensing as well. Okay, so transitioning to recurring revenue. Nothing replaces a good plan. So you need to have a good plan, a good strategy to be able to move to recurring revenue. So one of the first things you need to do is define your vision, your strategy, and look at the impact it's going to have on the business. Now, we should have a positive and a risk impact, and that will mean that you will be able to understand what's happening within the organization, and plan to communicate that out as you go as well. So when you're defining your strategy, you'll need to have a look at your products and your product sets and which ones are suitable for recurring revenue subscription, how you're going to price that. So, and what's going to be included within that price. So, will that be just the product pricing and the maintenance, or will you be including some servicing in there as well? So, identifying the pricing, identifying which levels of pricing you want to put together, and that also leads into packaging. So, how you're going to package your products. So, we tend to find that hardware companies moving to software often have a big price list. And it's based on feature by feature by feature. While that's great in terms of part numbers for hardware, it then becomes quite complicated for the customers to understand what they've actually purchased in terms of support, in terms of how they want to upgrade, how they want to cross-sell and upsell. So we work with a couple of strategy companies that will help you with the packaging and pricing. We can do some analysis on that as well. We can point out where some of the areas of change you may want to consider are, but we would also refer you back to our partners in that area as well. Market positioning. Where are you in the market? Are you being disrupted in the market? So if you're being disrupted in the market, we're seeing a lot of disruption in the market across all different industries at the moment. And a lot of the bigger companies that we talk to aren't set up to be able to quickly change their business model to be able to protect against market erosion of those innovative software-only companies, because they can move a lot quicker. Customer success. Who's going to own customer success in your organization? How is that going to run? Are you going to be able to? Are you going to have more self-service from customers, which we found that they do enjoy? Your partners, do they want more self-service? Do they want to be more autonomous in how they're actually selling your products out to the end customers? And renewals. So for software renewals, we do look at 85% or above is good software renewals. If you're below 80% in your software renewals currently, then we would look at how that's working at the moment. There's probably some revenue opportunities that you may be missing at the moment. In terms of delivery, we need to do some analysis on, or you need to do some analysis on the software supply chain. So the whole software supply chain, from the trial of the product through to the order, through to the delivery of the product, all the way through to the activation of the product and back to the ERP to be able to invoice the customer. The roles and responsibilities: who owns what, where different parts of the organization need to go to get an answer about what their licensing policy is. And that's why it's great to see that the majority of people who are owning software licensing within your organization, they know to go to the licensing product manager. And getting the right tools and technology in place. So the tools and technologies are a suite of technologies that need to be put in place really to have a successful recurring revenue and subscription economy. So one of the things that we often find is that when customers are moving from a perpetual basis to a term basis, often they look at a subscription model as just about term pricing. It's just about splitting the yearly fee over 12 months, or the 3-year fee over 3 years. So you need to think about more than that. So you actually, when you're moving to subscription, you're actually delivering a service to the customer. So the service experience throughout the software life cycle needs to be joined up, and it needs to be well communicated within the organizations. So in terms of the strategy and the business, what business models do you offer today? What business models will you offer? How is your market changing? So although you can think about today, we have a business model of subscription. How are your customers changing, and are they changing regionally, or are they changing market by market? What the financial impact will be on the business model you have in the organization. So you will find that if you're moving from perpetual to recurring revenue, there will be some changes within the cash flow, because obviously with a perpetual license, you're getting one upfront cost. With a subscription license, you're getting a growing revenue as you go through the subscription term. So one of the areas that we would very strongly advise that you include is your stakeholder group is finance, because they will need to understand how that's going to affect the revenues as you go forward. Which products will offer subscription? Not all products are suitable for subscription. So you need to identify which products you need to adjust, which products will be adopted within the market for a subscription, and which won't. Have a look at your pricing strategy, and also as we said about how the products are packaged. So we would work with Simon Kucher and Navin, so a couple of the partners we work with in terms of pricing strategies and packaging, and we can introduce you to those partners. In terms of delivery, are your teams ready to execute your strategy? So we do an analysis within our business value assessments, which will not only identify where maybe missed revenue opportunities or operational savings can be realized, but we'll also have a look at how the teams are structured and if they're actually operationally ready for executing the subscription strategy. What needs most attention in your ecosystem? Again, through a series of interviews, we can find out where the biggest pains are for the organization, and that will include areas of concern within parts of the organization. So, for example, if you're getting a lot of support tickets, for example, are support ready for an increase in the revenues that you're going to get, and the increase in the customer touch points you're going to get by moving to a subscription-based licensing? We need to define who in the organization owns software licensing. So who the go-to person is, or the go-to group is within the organization who owns software licensing, so everybody's clear. And who the executive is driving the change. As we said earlier, if there's no executive driving the change, because this is a transformational program you're going to be going into, moving from perpetual to recurring revenue, this is something that you would need to ensure that you've got from buying from the executives. So as an example of how we look at are your teams ready to execute strategy, this is it's a very simple dashboard, but it's really just to identify, are order operations ready? That they know that this is coming. So in this example, the channel, there was a channel partner program being set up, so they're not ready at the moment. So we needed to make sure that the channel partner strategy and the organization are trained, and they're made aware of what's happening within the organization and the strategy for moving to subscription. We talked a little bit about the ecosystem. Thales, we really work in the analytics delivery and license area, but you will need to have a look at what your billing systems are at the moment. So your ERP system is not necessarily your billing system, because there are different capabilities that you'll need to look at as well. So we work with the whole ecosystem. You need to have a look at pricing, have a look at the quoting and the contractual side of it as well. We would help with the licensing and the entitlement management as well. So making sure that your customers have the right to use the product. And that would go for an on-premise or a cloud product as well. And then you have a look at, then you need to consider billing engines as well, because traditional ERP systems aren't set up particularly well for doing subscription billing at the moment. So some of the tools and some of the areas that you need to consider moving from perpetual to subscription, a usage model, product ownership. When you have a perpetual license, it's almost that the customer owns that product. As you're going into a subscription and usage model, you have to provide that ongoing value. So there has to be continuous feature engagement, new features coming into the products, new benefits coming to the product that will be of value to the customer. Making sure the memorable experience, and these are good memorable experiences. So good examples of those would be, I can reorder my my new license. I can add a new feature through a self-service portal. I don't have to ring a sales rep to be able to improve my experience and improve the value I'm getting from yourselves. On-demand fulfillment, so making sure that you have the ability to immediately activate the customer. So we want to be able to help you to be able to immediately activate a feature on the customer's software that they've enabled through and bought, purchased, perhaps through self-service. And personalized services as well. Personalized services are different to customization. So it's about having one product that you can switch on and off different features. It's not about developing specific features for specific customers. So I just want to clarify that's personalized services is about configurability of your products and making sure that your customers can configure and add new features and add new benefits without having to wait for a new product release or a different product. So some of the feature highlights that we have, so flexible license models. I talked about a little bit about that earlier. One of the areas we find is that most of our customer base have a wide market and they have a wide customer maturity. So they will actually be looking at not just one business model, but they'll be looking at various different types of business models depending on the maturity of the customer and the maturity of the market. Integrated back office, it's about automation, it's about automating the quote to cash process. It's about making sure that as we move forward, if you acquire a company that has or merge with a company that has a different type of license generator, then that can actually be used in the back office. So the sales operations and operations don't have to think about using a different tool for a specific type of product. New customer experience, so we talked about the self-service and in-application activation, so you can do a hands-free activation. Making sure that you have a fully customizable UI so that the customers can actually use that within their own portal, and it's flexible about how they can actually use that, use your portal and order, reorder, and do different activities within the portal. Data collection and reporting. Data collection and reporting used to be fairly straightforward, but we want to be able to have a look at what the insights are, what insight benefits we can provide, not just into the product management and product development organization, where they can see which features are actually being used and which features are valuable, but it also enables you to look at different packaging and pricing based on what the customer demand is, so you can quickly change that and react to how your customers are changing before the market changes as well. So have a look at how to get started. So within Thales, we have two tracks. So we have a business track that we lead with, and that's part of the organization that I'm in. And what we really look at is we want to focus on the value to your business. So before we start going down a technical track and a solution track, we want to understand what the value is for your business, but also help you understand how you can gain more value through subscription licensing and other licensing as well, flexibility. So we do a value assessment, and that includes financial impacts. It includes operational readiness. And it also includes the IT landscape and the readiness of all the different departments within the chain. And then we look at that. We look at the success measurement. So we look at the business case. We look at the financial impacts. We look at the organizational readiness, and we start putting metrics down in place to have a baseline of where we can measure, so that as we go through the relationship, we can understand where we are, if we're not hitting the metrics, why aren't we hitting them? And then we can do course adjustment as we go through as well. The solution track is a traditional track. So I've got a problem, I need a solution. So the solution track is really the technical track. It's looking at our technology. It's looking at what industry problems we're trying to solve, and how our solutions will work for you to actually meet your business needs and the value to your business. So thank you everybody for your time. I think we've got some time for questions. If anybody has any questions, if you could ask those either in the questions window or in the chat window.
Whilst we're waiting for some questions to come in, Eddie, I think we've got a few that came in already. Earlier on, you talked about the growing trend of how licensing is evolving, and on there you talked about two concepts of Perpetual that was evolving into module-based licensing, and the question was, could you explain the differences between those two, between Perpetual and module-based?
Yeah, okay, so it's a matter of packaging. So Perpetual will be one product. So it'll be one product that's being sold to the customer. They bought the product and they're paying maintenance on it, and they're actually getting the updates and the additional features included within the maintenance. The module-based or feature-based, sometimes we call it as well, will be more modular packages that will have a set of features that are applicable to certain markets. Or certain customers. So it's a bit more flexible, and it enables you to segment your markets to a greater degree as well.
Great, thank you very much. You talked about on the pitfalls, one of the items you talked about was the SKU proliferation. And some of the audience members weren't even sure what that meant, even to what a SKU might even represent. Could you talk a little bit more detail about that as well?
Sure. So SKU stands for stock keeping unit. It's typically a hardware term, but it's essentially the parts number within your ERP. So where we find the customers are using feature by feature based, then the SKU list or the price list, if you like, can expand very, very rapidly. Now some of those SKUs may be, I've seen examples where the SKU is actually associated to a number of products as well. So you may have, if I buy 10 products, it's one part number. If I buy 20 products, it's another part number. If I buy 50 products, it's 20 plus maybe some additional ones. So it just expands out the number of part numbers that need to be managed as well. So repackaging those into something which is more consumable for the customer and more relevant for the customer as well will not only help the customer to understand what they've actually bought, because you have to remember as well that often the department that's actually purchasing the product from you or the features from you will be procurement, but the users are completely different. So there'll be a different set of users, and often the users don't know what product to purchase, what procurement to purchase, and procurement don't know what the users do day to day.
Great. Okay. There's another question here regarding some of the transition from a technology perspective. So can you describe how existing Perpetual licenses, e.g. Sentinel, might transition to subscription, i.e. mixing Perpetual licenses with add-on subscription licenses? Have you got some examples of how customers have sort of eased that migration?
So So I guess what we're talking about there is we're talking about that we maybe have a base package that is a perpetual license that the customer's bought, and then they're adding on a feature which is based on a subscription that they may only need for a certain term. So the way that we work with that is in terms of the different components that we have within Sentinel, is that we have a Sentinel RMS, which is the license enforcement piece, which is integrated into the products. So that's just an enforcement piece. The actual business model, in terms of whether you use Perpetual, whether you have a subscription base, is actually managed in the back office side. So it's managed in what we call the entitlement management system, the EMS. So that means that you can actually go in, you can package that together as I will have a Perpetual base product. And then I will have an entitlement for additional features A, B, and C that would actually be associated with a subscription license model.
Thank you.
Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. We've got another question here. How does this work? Right. This is I think a very common question actually, is how would this work for smaller companies, right, where you don't have these sort of so much focus in staff. You know, you've got a lot of staff multitasking, doing multiple jobs. How does this how would this be done differently for a company like that?
So not everybody will need automation. So really what you're looking at is you're looking at what your business is trying to do. We talk to big companies and small companies and medium-sized companies as well. So the scalability really depends on the pressure you have organizationally on growth. We really only recommend to have the end-to-end automation, which I talked about quite a lot, if you're doing a lot of transactions. So if you're doing a lot of transactions and you're doing a lot of transactions that are maybe causing some strain on the operational ordering staff, then that's when you need to do automation. If you're the type of business that has maybe 50, 100 customers, but they're buying high value products, you don't need to have the automation. It can all be done through the back office tool that we provide, and that makes it very easy to do. And it's very easy for them for you to actually integrate. You don't need to integrate it. You can just use that as a standalone feature. Hopefully that answers the question. So essentially, the scalable situations, but it does mean that we would need to have a discussion around what's best suited for your organization today and in the future.
Thanks, Eddie. Great stuff. This is again a very common question, right? When you think about a subscription model, it's commonly associated with software that's connected in the cloud, right? That's where most people think about when they hear about subscriptions. Is it also as suitable for on-premise software, right? So things like Windows desktop applications.
It is. The key really there is your connectivity. So you can have, if you have, there's three main topologies that we deploy to. We have fully connected cloud, which is obviously the easiest one and would best for SaaS and on-premise where you have a network connection. You have sometimes connected. And we are actually seeing more and more of this now as well. So a lot of customers where they maybe have historically been in a closed network, because when you do subscription, you're continually implementing new features and new benefit to the customer. A lot of your customers, when you discuss with them, they will actually be open, if you're providing value through those features, to intermittently going out through a specific IP address through the firewall, to be able to get those features continually. We've seen that in traditionally very high security areas that you would normally look at those environments and say there's no way that anybody is going to go into those environments. But even in discrete manufacturing, we are seeing some customers actually go out through a specific IP, outbound only, to be able to get a new feature that's going to add benefit to them. And then we have on-premise, which is totally disconnected. And although we can do subscription there as well, the subscription is a little bit different because you're going to have to manage that subscription through maybe a service engineer going on site to be able to manage and take the true ups on the subscription as well.
Great, thank you, Eddie. Okay, another question. We've got a bit of time for a couple more, I think.
Yep.
How do current data protection laws, obviously things like GDPR, how do they intervene with collecting detailed user data, right? Time of use and all that kind of stuff, all of the usage metrics that we were talking about?
Ooh, so the usage metrics aren't down to the user level to begin with. They're down to a trend. In terms of I'm not a lawyer, so we probably need to defer that one, and we could probably take that question offline and provide whoever asked that with some more details offline.
Yep. Okay, we'll take that one. We've got that. We've got the details of who asked that one. All right. Let's go with one more question. There was a question around resellers. So basically, when handling licensing through a manufacturer, distributor, right?
Mm-hmm.
When there's a supply chain involved, what steps can be taken to help identify the customer in that scenario?
Okay, so Sentinel has essentially three portals. So we have an administration portal. There's a partner portal which would be used for resellers, and that will give them the ability to manage stock if you're going to give your partners stock, and then that would be then handed down to the customer. And the customer will have their own portal as well, so they can order stock from their partner. Often we find that it's not a technology problem when you're actually deploying the partner portal and the customer portal. It's more of either a contractual problem or it's a negotiation problem. It's a communication problem. So often what we find is that when you're manufacturing a component, for example, and that component is being sold through a partner channel, it may be that partner is putting your component into a proposition that may be using your competitors' components as well to the end customer. We see it a lot in building automation, for example. So where that happens, there needs to be value added for the partner to be able to for you to be able to get the end customer data. So who is going to the end customer? Okay, so it's creating value, but it's rather than creating value for the end customer, it's creating value for your resellers and your partners and your distribution channel.
Thanks very much, Eddie. We've received an awful lot of questions, so there will certainly be some that haven't been answered, but by all means, you can see Eddie's contact details on the screen there. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. So, Eddie, over to you for some closing comments.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for that. So I hope that was useful for everybody. If you do want to have a separate discussion, and maybe if you want me to replay this within your organization and have a deeper discussion, if you can reach out to me and we can look at organizing that as well. And I want to thank you all for your time. And any other questions that you may have, you have my contact details there. Feel free to reach out to me, and we can have further discussions. Thank you, everybody.